Welcome back to Sailing Northern Brees. Marie and I are very happy that you're taking the time to follow along on our adventure. We had experienced many lifetime moments and made lifelong memories in Greenland, and we want to share them with our family and friends. So we've made it to Greenland. It's chilly here even in July. The water temperature is 3 degrees Celsius, so we're really very much enjoying Ebby, our new Eberspacher diesel-powered cabin heater, to take the chill off the boat. As you remember, the whole boat hull is sitting in that 3-degree water, so it's pretty chilly. In this video, we're docked in Nanortalik, and we'll visit Tasermiut Fjord before heading into Prins Christiansund, a protected passage to the east coast. This is Nanortalik's open-air museum and church. They have displays of life from the 1800s and early 1900s, the best of which I thought was the variety of local kayaks made from found wood and animal skins. There's only one forest of tiny trees on the entire island, so driftwood and imported wood were used. And here's one of our iceberg friends from the approach, trying to be discreet, hiding in the mist. And this is smiling Aaron, happy to see land after this longest sea voyage of my life. And followed by Marie hoisting the Greenland courtesy flag, and then the yellow customs quarantine flag. Interestingly, the customs officers who visited our boat the next day were asking about the alcohol and chocolate they would have brought with us to their village. Alcohol I understand, but chocolate? That interest was a mystery to us. We offered them some and they declined. It was just an odd quirk for customs, I think. You'll see a grounded iceberg in the distance behind Marie, the size of a small house. It can't come into the harbor, but did send ambassadors as it broke up. We were graciously welcomed not only by the customs officers, but also the staff at Royal Arctic, who allowed us to use their dock. Royal Arctic runs supply ships for these remote communities. It is a commercial pier, so has a rough surface, and along with 2-meter tides required very long dock lines and a robust fender board. On the left you'll see that Royal Arctic dock, and to the right the downtown area of Nanortalik, including the power plant. Nanortalik's population is about 1,100 people. We went for a short walk to stretch our legs the afternoon that we arrived. Here is one of their inner harbors, very calm but too shallow for the breeze to enter. This house is typical of most residences, small wooden structures. The cemetery is located on a stony beach on that inner harbor. You can see the white crosses in the center of this frame. And another view of town back towards the main harbor from a high point. Several icebergs are lingering, with the one furthest on the right side, behind the island, perhaps being the 60-foot tall one that surprised us in fog on our way in that morning. The Misty Moor, one of our buddy boats originally from Scotland, but we had met them in Halifax, arrived the next day, having traveled from Pakporto. We had a jammed halyard, and a young member of their crew hadn't yet been up a sailboat mast, so he offered to go up and unstick it for us. I was quite happy not to have to make that trip again. He quickly got it unstuck and back into the shiv, as well as these heroic photos for his young son. One of the ambassadors from the big icebergs that are grounded in the outer harbor. Remember, 80 to 90% of the bergs are underwater, so if you see a 20-foot tall iceberg, you know that it can ground out in water depth of about 80 feet or more. These big bergs cannot enter the outer harbor, so we're safe from them. They won't get us. But I do wrangle their bergy children a little bit so that the wind doesn't push them against our hull. Many small boats are anchored in this harbor. I wonder what type of anchor they use that works against the push of these bergy bits. And a few days later, more visitors from Canada. 2 Norwegian boats that we'd originally met up with in St. Peter's Marina on Cape Breton Island arrived. They were a little crazier than us, braving more ice and rougher seas when choosing their sailing windows. A young couple from Norway and their 2 young children, and another family from Norway on the second boat. Back to the local culture. We were fortunate enough to have arrived a few days before confirmation. The local religion is Lutheran, and the pastor and his new members very kindly consented to our presence and a few pictures. Their dress is very beautiful, and I expect all carefully created by hand, either by themselves or their family members, particularly for the young ladies, but also the boots worn by the young men, hand-beaded. I believe that this house next to the church may be the manse as they emerge from there. As they approach, we notice that a christening had just been concluded, as well as a wedding. It may be that the minister travels to several villages, so they need to schedule multiple services while he's in town. The confirmation, the christening, and the wedding. We attended the service, but did not film inside the church. The service was in their native language, but all very familiar, including the hymns to Marie, a member of this faith. I had some fun making faces at the children in the nearby pews, making them laugh while respectfully observing this very significant ceremony. Nanortalik's 2 grocery stores are surprisingly well stocked with all the essential groceries and bear deterrents. Apparently the muskox can also be aggressive. So instead of just selling bear spray, which the polar bears consider as seasoning on their human meal, rifles are for sale or rent, right there in the grocery store. And some more Bergie bit wrangling as their friend from the harbor begins to break up. We saw little wildlife other than the many birds. Here, this mother duck has quite a large brood. Hopefully they are growing fast and ready to follow her when the snow starts to fly in a couple of short months from now. And while we didn't see a lot of wildlife, the flowers were a welcome bright spot on our hikes. Apparently daisies grow nearly everywhere. We've seen them every place we've been. There are also these amazing puffball type plants everywhere. They're about 2 inches or 5 centimeter diameter seed pods on them. Very strange, very beautiful. We spent one afternoon on a long hike up the hill behind town. It is a boulder-strewn landscape with tundra plants in between. This sunny day got all the way up to 7 degrees, or about 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was a glorious day for a hike. We saw one lonely butterfly, but no doubt he had friends nearby. Once up on the hillside, we could hear water running everywhere, but could not see it. We were walking on spongy tundra, and the water was running all around us underneath our feet. It was a little difficult walking and filming without twisting an ankle, but I was mostly able to keep up to Marie on our way back down. And, you may not believe it, but a couple of families went for a swim today. Remember, the ocean is 3 degrees. This pond is likely warmer, but with daily temperatures between freezing and 10 degrees, how warm could it be? Crazy. We didn't want to impose on them, so the shot is poor. but you can see them here. It's a sunny 7 degrees. Good time for a swim. Yep, that's an iceberg back there. These teenagers must be really bored. And then we took a very long day trip up to see Tasermiut Fjord. It was about 40 miles each way, but with many hours of daylight, that's not too much for our slow sailboat. It is apparently very beautiful, with the Greenland ice cap reaching down to the end of the fjord. So we're off into the land of the Inuit and the Vikings, off the grid. We began the day in fog again, motoring as there wasn't any wind in the fjord. A few dolphins visited, but we didn't quite get them on film. And then the sun came out and we saw nature's majesty. Amazing.
Yeah, they're buggers. The fish are all waiting for them to do their job, though. Stir up the birds are all waiting for them to stir up the fish.
What a great birthday for me. I'm a lucky guy to get to enjoy such amazing adventures with Marie as the admiral of the ship, of course. And so many waterfalls. And the mountains are so rugged, young and not yet eroded by time. And we finally see the glacier. It's still nearly 20 miles in front of us. The size of everything is enormous. As the day progressed, and the hours, since we're only moving at about 6 knots, I felt smaller and smaller. Nature is huge. I hope that you too get opportunities to feel small. It's very humbling. This place is fantastic. There are no people living here. We saw one small house with a small dock, which is perhaps used seasonally. This is way off the grid, near the end of the world. Fortunately, these waterfalls originate from the melting ice cap. Climate change can be seen here. As we get further, you'll see valleys at the base of the glaciers with no greenery, no vegetation, as that area was until very recently covered with ice. Shrinking glaciers are happening around the world, not just in the Rockies, the Alps, and the Andes, but even up here in the Arctic. If you look closely here, you can see an anchored sailboat on the right and a tent on shore near the center where some German tourists that we had met earlier are camping. A cold but beautiful spot. And then we begin our return trip to Nanortalik. The following morning, in 40-knot winds, we were asked to leave the dock as a cargo vessel needed the space. Thankfully, they allowed us to raft up with them, and they served as a great wind block. We had to climb over their ship to get ashore, but we're happy to have the spot to tie off in the very high winds. This would be our final day in Nanortalik, as both us and the cargo ship were leaving the next morning. The cargo ship was on its way to Denmark for scrapping, where the crew would pick up the new vessel and return it to Greenland to begin its service. Sadly, this ship was only about the same age as the Northern Brees, but had led a hard life in the Arctic and was heading for the recycling yard. In the following morning, we set off for Prince Christian Sund, the next leg of our journey, planning to spend the next night at the end of the Sund at the abandoned weather station before starting the crossing to Iceland. Once again, thanks to all for helping us on our journey. From John Marentad, who got me hooked on sailing at Port Stanley 30 years ago, and John Novak, who sold us his beloved Uray in 2015, through all of the great folks we met along the way. Stu and Wendy, Paul and Ann, even Grouchy, Andy and Doris. And of course, Jimmy, Gary, JT, Nick, the list goes on. In memory of Dan from Dan's Nautical and Chris, the new proprietor, we learned so much in Lake St. Clair and the Great Lakes, and even more since leaving there. So that's our thanks for this episode, and we'll see you again soon from Prince Christian Sund. Bye for now.